Hey, welcome to The Peak. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Michelle Vance. I am here visiting with you today as the general manager of this facility. Part of your hiring process is to make sure that you've gone over policies and procedures that are important to what you do. So I'd like to make sure we go visit a few places in the buildings and go through that material. First off, you need to make sure that there are a couple of things already that have been taken care of. You need to have been talked to about your initial job assignment and the number of hours per week that you would be working, as well as a rate of pay. If that is something that you do not clearly understand, I need you to get to your manager and make sure that is clarified for you. Also, you should have gotten a packet that includes things like an emergency contact information page, a W-4, and something called a BRAT document with your policies and procedures. Again, if you have not seen a piece or any of that, please let us know immediately. We're starting here in the coach's office so that you can see a couple of important things that you need to be aware of. Behind me, you're going to see some bulletin boards. It's the bottom and whiteboard that you mostly need to be aware of. There are sometimes messages left here from managers to staff. So would you just be aware to watch that part of the coach's office? And it doesn't matter what department you are working in, even if you're not coaching gym, there are still things that sometimes end up there important for you to see. Also on the desk, on the top shelf is an employee time off request form. I'm going to give you more details about that in just a few minutes. There's also a spot for gym coaches to turn in weekly lesson plans. In fact, a couple of spots for you to see. The boxes behind here are for gym coaches, special events staff. You can even find some that are labeled as preschool or swim at certain times of the year. But that is for you to keep your valuables in, and we'd encourage you to do so. Basically though, the rest of this office houses a few of the managers, special events, dance. My position is the general manager and education director, and that's what these desks are for. You'll find 2 computers in this room used to log out or to put your hours into. We'd encourage you to please use these as the log out computers. Make sure that if there's ever a problem with one of those, or you have an issue with something in the office, that you get to a manager and confirm what's going on, so that if something is not working, we do know about that. Other than that, there's one other place. Sometimes you can even see an example right now. Sometimes there are messages hung here. Oftentimes what goes here is something to sign up for. For example, we have an event coming at the end of October that we need help and volunteers for. So for a few days, there was a sign hanging here that asked for volunteers. So again, a couple of places to look: the bulletin boards, and sometimes hanging from these bins that will give you information about what's going on. So this is the coach's office, a place for you to keep your valuables. Also on the desk, on the top shelf is an employee time off request form. I'm going to give you more details about that in just a few minutes. There's also a spot for gym coaches to turn in weekly lesson plans. In fact, a couple of spots for you to see. The boxes behind here are for gym coaches, special events staff. You can even find some that are labeled as preschool or swim at certain times of the year. But that is for you to keep your valuables in, and we'd encourage you to do so. Basically though, the rest of this office houses a few of the managers, special events, dance. My position is the general manager and education director, and that's what these desks are for. You'll find 2 computers in this room used to log out or to put your hours into. We'd encourage you to please use these as the log out computers. Make sure that if there's ever a problem with one of those, or you have an issue with something in the office, that you get to a manager and confirm what's going on, so that if something is not working, we do know about that. Other than that, there's one other place. Sometimes you can even see an example right now. Sometimes there are messages hung here. Oftentimes what goes here is something to sign up for. For example, we have an event coming at the end of October that we need help and volunteers for. So for a few days, there was a sign hanging here that asked for volunteers. So again, a couple of places to look, the bulletin boards, and sometimes hanging from these bins that will give you information about what's going on. So this is the coach's office, a place for you to keep your valuables. Okay, the next piece that I need to give you information about is where to find things specific for staff benefits or staff requests for time off. Both of those forms are found in this drawer at the front desk, and they are labeled under E for employee, and you would be looking for one of two forms. It would be called a registration form to request some class benefits, or it's an employee time off request form. Those are both found in this drawer. In this cupboard, you're going to find a folder that's called Peak Accident Report Forms. That is important for any staff member in every department to know about. Inside that folder is an accident report form, and what we'd like you to pay attention to is obviously if there is blood involved, if there is a broken bone, that needs to be filled out immediately. Anything that is filled out goes to Marty's desk. It jumps over any manager, goes directly to Marty. But I'd like you to consider a couple of other things. If you do some sort of a suck air kind of a situation where you watch something, for example, on a trampoline, a child landed funny and you did that kind of a scenario, it is worth filling out an accident report form, at least so that we have documentation that something happened. Also, maybe you've had in preschool a couple of little kids, as we were running and playing a game, crash together and bonk some heads. Again, that would probably be worth making sure there is an accident report form filled out, just so that we know what has happened, and especially if there had been some goose eggs that came out of that. The bottom line regarding any sort of an accident is if you think, or if it is serious enough, it stops the athlete from doing their activity, or a preschooler, dance, or anything like that, if it stops them from doing what they're doing, make sure there is something filled out and you communicate to a parent what happened verbally, and then make sure that you follow up. Inside that folder, there is a set of examples so that you would know how to fill those out. Or front desk, other coaches can help you if you have questions. But it's found in this cupboard, and the binder is clearly labeled accident report forms. Okay, so let's continue. As I mentioned, you should have received a couple of packets as you were hired. One that included a BRAT document, which stands for Boundaries, Responsibilities, Authority, and Tasks assigned to you in the position you're hired for at the Peak. The other thing is a set of papers that is referred to as our policies and procedures. We're going to walk through that for a few minutes. I am not going to hit everything in that, but it is your responsibility to make sure that you have read that document and turned back into Carly the form that tells us you have looked at that and you are clear in anything that refers to. So let's start first of all with how you come to work. It is important you come with the right kind of attitude. You are dealing with children, and may I offer you a challenge that we are here to create loyal customers, more than just satisfied or happy customers. I would like you to do everything you can to create a loyal customer, and a lot of that has to do with the way you arrive at work, the way you greet people, the way you greet your students, and how often you take an opportunity to build relationships. It is your priority to help these children come and have a happy, fun experience while they are learning whatever they are involved in at the Peak. Please understand we expect you to be prompt and on time. For many of the coaching situations, that means you are here approximately 5 minutes before your class starts. So you have time to put your things away and get out and set stations. For special events and preschool, that timing is different, so make sure you check with your manager. For example, preschool I know is 15 minutes before a scheduled class starts. But please be on time and make sure you are doing your best to arrive ready to work. If you need to be gone from work, there's really two instances that might be a scenario. One is something you know about and you schedule an absence in advance. If that is the case, I mentioned finding the employee time off request form. We need you to fill that out. That's going to tell us what classes you're requesting that you have time off from and who it is that's subbing for you. Make sure that you get lesson plans ready and know that you personally are responsible to get that sub and make all arrangements to have your classes covered on the day you wish to be off. I would ask you to please avoid scheduling things like doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, anything else that you might have cause to leave work for, and work to put those on days you're not scheduled to be at work. We know that can't always be avoided, but if you can, try and do that. Now, the second scenario when you might be absent is an emergency absent. You are sick or a child is sick, and certainly we're happy to support you in taking care of yourself and taking care of your family. However, would you please do the following? Still make sure your manager receives a text or a message saying, I'm not coming in, but this particular sub is. You are still responsible to get a hold of that person, as well as make sure they understand what lesson plan or what activities they need to be doing for that class time. When you come back, it is still very helpful for you to find an employee time off request sheet and fill that out as much as you can so we have record of what happened. Make sure that you do this paperwork. This does help document things for the peak, especially in regards to anything like an accident or injury that might occur if you happen to be gone. Acceptable time off allotments are set by department. It kind of depends on how often you work and how many hours on those given days. So please see as part of your documentation a separate page that notes how much time off each department has kind of set as a guideline. All right, so moving on, I want to let you know about paydays at the peak. Checks are paid out on the 5th and the 20th of each month. Now, if those days happen to fall over a holiday or a weekend, those checks go in the first business day following. Make sure that you record hours daily under the department-specific categories. As you meet with your manager and you are trained on Jackrabbit and logging hours, that will become apparent what I'm talking about. Also, again, a reminder, the computers that you want to use are both found in the coach's office. They're the best ones to get to. Non-teaching hours are a little bit different that we need to make you aware of. These are hours that you use to write postcards. We'll talk about those. Or attend staff meeting, perhaps help with a facility cleaning day. It's a time when you are working here but not necessarily coaching and actively engaged with students. Those are logged as non-teaching class hours under out of class time. And those are paid just specifically by department, but we just want to make you aware a little bit different in case we are doing some scenarios where you're not teaching children. Again, those are called non-teaching hours. Speaking of children, let me just make this clear. Staff members' children are only allowed to be in the facility during teaching hours if they are in a registered class. Unsupervised children or visitors are not allowed to hang out in the lobby, coach's office, or other areas. However, we know that there are sometimes class overlap times when you start before your child does in a class that they may be attending, or vice versa. Upon request for some of our older children, 8 and older, we can make accommodations for that, but basically we want you to be prepared to come to work and focus on work and not have to worry about children. Also, staff meetings are set by department. Every once in a while we will have a full facility meeting, but make sure you understand when your manager has set staff meetings for. We do expect you to be there. Those are oftentimes moments when we have training and some time to really hash over and talk about ways to improve or things to help us as coaches and teachers. We are also part of a community, and Marty is, as an owner, very big on making sure we do things to give back to the community. There are events scheduled a couple of times during the year that are termed community events. For example, I mentioned something called Spooky Spectacular. It's a fun family Halloween carnival and power tumbling invitational. We also have a triathlon that usually happens late spring or summer that is geared for families in the area. Marty requests that as members of her staff, we be willing to donate 2 hours on one or a couple of those community events. We'd like you to just know about that up ahead of time and watch for opportunities to please give back in that fashion. Those events happen every year about the same time, so you can kind of plan and know that you're watching for something in October, possibly something in December, and then definitely something late spring or summer as a community event. Your attire at the Peak needs to be modest and professional, taking into account that we are working with children, which is one of the reasons we say modest. Also taking into account that we're working with children in very active roles. So dresses, heels are probably not very conducive to this kind of scenario. For gym coaches, Marty requests that you always are wearing a gym staff shirt, so you are easily identified as a coach. That same scenario does not happen with preschool, with dance, but we do encourage you to still continue to keep in mind the modest and professional image. For swim staff, you are required to have a single one-piece suit. No two pieces so that we don't have parts right up or have bare midriffs showing. You are really just to act as an example and a role model. If you have a question about something, please feel free to ask. Your image as you are coaching or teaching is something to pay attention to. Now, not only your look, but what I mean by the image is, what does a parent see and perceive by the way you're standing, by the way you look, or even how they see you interacting with the children? Do they understand that you are engaged? We expect you to be. Can we tell that you are taking seriously what you are teaching and how you are monitoring the children? Sitting down and coaching by watching and just pointing is not an actively engaged person. We want you to consider what a parent, what your boss would see in the way that you are standing and working. So again, will you make sure that you are greeting children, greeting them with a smile, that you are engaged in classes and active in what's going on. You are either reading with a child, for example, in preschool. You are talking to parents as you facilitate a party. You are hands-on spotting or correcting a child that's in a gymnastics or tumbling class. It's important that we are not spectators to this, but that we are helping these children with every avenue we can. And the most active we can be is the best scenario. We did talk a little bit about injuries. That report is always critical to be done and must happen immediately following that injury. Those are found in that cupboard. They go to Marty's desk. One of the other things I want to reiterate again is that you follow up. So a call the next day to an injured athlete or student is important so that we know what happened with that. Again, you're watching for blood, for bones, for raised bumps on a head, and anything else that might cause you to really suck air or be concerned about what you saw happen. Please make sure you communicate with parents immediately on any of those events. All right, staff, so let's talk about parking. It is busy at the Peak in the afternoons and evenings. During the summer, it's busy all day long. So we would encourage you to please park in the north or south ends of the building. As much as possible, avoid out front. We want to leave those for our customers. Certainly there are times you may even be out on the road. Heads up about that, it's busy. We talked and mentioned where to find postcards. I did locate them. They are in one of the drawers of the desk in the coach's office. You are required to send 1 or 2 weekly to some of your students. Please look for specific reasons to send them. Maybe you had a little person really watching and listening well. That's a great character trait to make sure you mention or send a note on. If you have someone who achieved a skill or finished and completed something that you had them working on. Look for really specific and good reasons to honor and send a positive note to these children. Again, 1 to 2 a week. They are located in the coach's office in the far right desk next to the cubbies. You are welcome to put whatever message is on the back and the child's name on the front. If you leave them with the front desk, they will address them for you and mail them. Moving on, let me turn my page. We're going to talk for just a minute about staff benefits. Also, out by the front desk, I mentioned to you in the drawer, there was something called an employee registration benefit request. If you are working enough hours, it is possible you may be considered for an employee benefit for perhaps a child or sibling to receive a discount on a class. There are specific forms to fill out to assess whether or not that is something that is on tap for you. Those forms go to me in the coach's office. My desk area is next to the file cabinets in the coach's area. All right, so employee benefits as far as evaluations for possible merit pay or raises are done yearly. Usually we're going to try and do those during the shutdown time between a shift of summer and, fall to summer. So we're looking at about the end of May, very first part of June that we work to do those. Again, those are done yearly and set as appointments by program directors. Also, one more reminder, there should be spaces for you to keep personal belongings in. Watch also, besides the general places for notes, if there is something specific to you as a coach that you need to respond to via email or phone calls, there would be a message put right by your personal area. So we'd encourage you to watch for that and remember, and then help us to keep that area clean and neat. Again, it is generally not for children. There are a few exceptions, but again, just throwing that out to make sure we're careful with the areas that we work in. Now let's talk a little bit more about students and teacher or coach interaction. It is absolutely forbid by clients of the Peak to interact with students in any scenario not in a coaching or teaching means. For example, what I'm trying to say is things like Facebooking them, texting them personally, even calling them personally. It is not appropriate to do that. Postcards are not determined or considered to be a one-on-one contact because it's sent through the mail. The parent's going to get that first. If you have something you need to get to a student, a message or otherwise, please work through their parent to do so. Again, be very cautious about your relationships and the way you are contacting and you are communicating with students. Work with the parent. Personal interaction must be limited to business relationship. We also caution you not to give rides to students or have them over to your home for any reason. Really, your teaching and working with children occurs at the Peak and it stays here. For those of you who work with preschool, there are times we leave the premises on field trips and such, but we go as a group. It is not a one-on-one situation. I will also mention that depending on the department you are in, swim, cheer, dance, and gym all are participating in private lessons. If you are a coach who is qualified and interested in doing that, we need to have you let Carly at the front desk know. There is a specific rate of pay. There is a specific means for signing up and how they calendar lessons with you. And there's a specific, very specific procedure for how you record what's happening. I tell you that in conjunction with communicating with students because we never want you to offer private lessons in a scenario when a child would be one-on-one with a teacher. There should be parents involved, perhaps other students in the building, and that's what our front desk helps coordinate so that you are in a safe environment with the children. All right, so staff, that is pretty much it. It is not everything in the papers that you were given. I want to encourage you again to make sure you've gone through here, that you have also looked at your BRAT document. You understand an absentee policy. You understand what tasks are required of you as a teacher or as a coach. There are some things specific to different areas. For example, gym coaches, we need your help cleaning up each night. So part of that BRAT document says that a task is to help be a cleaner in straightening and putting things away. Same kinds of things occur in preschool and special events. But again, I encourage you to look through this. If there are questions about any of the documents or items that we've gone over, I need to have you let me know. The other thing I just want to end with is that we will work really hard to keep lines of communication open. I want you to make sure you understand who your manager is, that you can go to that person if you have concerns, successes, questions. If that person is perhaps part of a problem or for some reason you wish to go to a different avenue, please come to me next above the manager before ever going to Marty. We want to keep lines of communication. It should go from staff to a manager to me. And I am happy to help or listen if you have questions, anything you would like to sit down over. You can reach me by email. You can leave a message for me. I'm happy to be here and make time for you as a staff member. We welcome you to the Peak and are looking forward to some great things from you as a staff member. Thank you.